like you belong to right now. And let's see how everyone is feeling today. So far, 40% have voted. So we hope you can all vote in the poll so that we can check how everyone is doing. So here in Cebu, we will be back to MECQ by tomorrow, and I hope you are all still doing well despite the surge of the cases. Okay, we'll wait for a few more to respond. Right. Okay. So 73%. Once we reach 80%, Sir Michael, maybe we can show the votes, or
Yes. Okay, Miss Jazz.
maybe 75.
How are you, Miss Jazz?
I'm feeling tired, but I'm great. I'm excited this afternoon because I'll get to talk to different people, no, from different walks of life and from the different places in the country. How about you, Miss Jera? How are you?
I'm kind of feeling tired as well. Actually, today is my move out because I'm ECQ tomorrow. I have to be with my
Yeah,
family.
exactly. Many changes. Again, with
Yes.
the MECQ will adjust. I think in NCR, if you have participants from the NCR, I guess you're back to ECQ. No? So, yeah, more precautions. How's that? I think we can show the vote now, Sir Michael. For those who are unable to vote, you can just chat in. All right. So, okay, we are now seeing the poll results, right? So there are still some of us who are in the different zones. So again, for those who are in the blue zone, you're characterized by sadness or feeling tired. So maybe just take the time, to get a rest or take it easy. For those in the yellow zone, maybe slow down a bit. And for those who are in the red zone, now there are some who are in the red zone, maybe just 2%. But for those who are in the red zone, similar to the traffic lights, because since you're experiencing high intensity emotions, take a stop for a moment or pause. But for most of us, or 60%, no, who clicked on the green zone, so just like the traffic lights, it signals for us to go and start uncertain activities. So again, regardless of what zone you are in, acknowledge your feelings, and maybe this afternoon's webinar may be helpful not only for you, but for the people around you as well. All right. So thank you so much, Sir Michael. And we will now exit the polls and the results. Okay. Uh-huh. Wait. All right. So um, you're here, no, because I'm sure there's a reason, no, and that's to also care for students with anxiety and depression. And I'm sure you've heard of the terms anxiety and depression, no? So especially now with COVID-19, we hear that there is a rise, no, of cases of anxiety and depression. And sometimes we ask ourselves, what is really, no, what is anxiety and what is depression? So how do we define these terms, and is our definition of this correct? So we will start first with that, no, we with the definition of terms, and then eventually also what can we do as educators, but aside from that, also as parents, as friends, as significant others, as workmates. How can what can we do um, when we want to support someone who has mental health concerns? So again, this talk, this webinar is also somehow linked to my previous one, no, which is psychological first aid. So if you were able to join the psychological first aid webinar previously, then this can also be um, a supplement talk, no, for that. So let's start with anxiety, no. So what is anxiety? So, actually, according to the American Psychiatric Association, anxiety is a normal reaction to stress. And it can actually be beneficial in some situations. In what way? No? So, it can alert us to dangers, and it also helps us to prepare and pay attention. So, example, when you are going to give a talk to hundreds of people, or probably you're going to take your final exams or your licensure examinations, there is anxiety that comes with it. And with that, it also actually helps you prepare for the upcoming event. In what way? That you want to do well, you do not want to fail. So with that, you also study ahead, or let's say you prepare for your talking points um, prior to your talk. So this normal feeling of nervousness or anxiety or anxiousness, it also differs from anxiety disorders. Now, how can you tell if your anxiety is normal? How or how can you tell if it's already an anxiety disorder? So for Madoc, no, this is actually no. So when we talk about anxiety disorder, it involves excessive fear or anxiety. So according to Madoc, there are three measures no wherein you can check if your anxiety is excessive. So how will we know? No? So again, there is normal anxiety, there's normal nervousness, but how do we know if it's already too much or it's already beyond? So there are three measures. That's interference, severity, and appropriateness. So first, interference. So if your anxiety is just bothersome, no, but it is not interfering with your life, then it is probably not an anxiety disorder. But if your anxiety is getting in the way of important activities, so it is more likely to be an anxiety disorder. So sometimes this one can also dictate the life choices that a person makes, such as their career, their educational goals, and but it can also limit no a person's participation in social or family activities. And it can also sometimes lead to serious complications such as depression, alcoholism, or drug abuse. Another measure is in terms of severity. So if your anxiety is unpleasant, but it is not constant, severe, or overwhelming, then probably it is not an anxiety disorder, no. So anxiety disorders typically cause severe anxiety, which can be persistent, it can be exhausting, or even demoralizing. So sometimes it can even be accompanied by physical symptoms such as shortness of breath, racing heart, sweating, dizziness, nausea, trembling, feelings of unreality, and etc. So sometimes these are this is also one way. When it already affects physically, it's also one way to check into the severity of an anxiety disorder. The third one is appropriateness. So people often feel anxiety, when they're confronted by a situation that is stressful or risky. So of course, right now with the COVID-19 pandemic, of course, it's stressful for some, no, especially as we're all going back to MECQ or ECQ. So there's the worry about how you are going to go through with all these changes once again, no, with the lockdowns. So there's anxiety also that accompanies that. With an anxiety disorder, however, a person feels anxiety that is out of proportion to the risk or the danger involved. So a person with an anxiety disorder, usually they can notice that their reactions are exaggerated or unnecessarily strong. However, is that it's just that they cannot easily also bring their anxiety disorder into control. So, in general, for a person to be diagnosed with an anxiety disorder, the fear or anxiety must be out of proportion to the situation, or it's age inappropriate. So, again, you have to check the appropriateness of the situation, the age of the person, and most importantly, it hinders the person's ability to function normally. It already affects their daily activities. Now, anxiety disorders can also cause people to try to avoid situations that trigger or worsen their symptoms, so they will avoid it, no? And this may affect their job performance, so they might not do certain activities, no, or will not um, do it, no? or it can also affect schoolwork, especially for students, and even their personal relationships. So there are many several types of anxiety disorders, no, but I won't be delving too much into this because it will lead to another discussion. So, certain anxiety disorders, we have generalized anxiety disorders, even your phobias or anxiety disorders, and even separation anxiety. No? So these are some of the anxiety disorders that are out there. Okay. So moving there, right. So aside from anxiety, we also try to define what is depression. So sometimes we hear people now say na I'm feeling depressed and all that. But how can we differentiate it from clinical depression? How do we know if it's already something more severe? No, it's not, because of course there are days that we feel unhappy, or there are days that we feel fed up, no, for a few days. So, and it's common, or most people go through these, no, periods of feeling down. But when you're depressed or clinically depressed, you feel persistently sad for a few weeks or months rather than just a few days. So it could range from, so again, it ranges from lasting feelings of unhappiness and hopelessness to losing interest in the things that you used to enjoy. So they say that many people with depression can also have symptoms of anxiety. Now, in depression or clinical depression, there can be physical symptoms too. So, such as feeling constantly tired, they sleep badly, or they have no appetite or even sex drive, and they have various aches and pains. Now, depression symptoms can actually vary from mild to severe and may include the following. No? So, they may feel sad or having a depressed mood. So, please take note that the symptoms must last at least 2 weeks, and it must represent a change in your previous level of functioning. So, again, that's some of these symptoms are feeling sad or having a depressed mood. There's a loss of interest or pleasure in activities once enjoyed. Changes in appetite, weight loss, or gain unrelated to dieting. Because if a person is someone who's actively doing something to lose weight, like exercising or changing their diet, then of course it's there. That's the cause. No, it's not related to this. And then trouble sleeping or sleeping too much, and then there's a loss of energy or increased fatigue, no, increase in purposeless physical activity. So what do we mean by purposeless physical activity? So examples of this are inability to sit still, or their pacing, or their hand wringing, or they could have slowed movements, no, or speech. And these actions must be severe enough to be observable by others. So what's common usually is that the person is not they're not behaving, or that they're not acting in what, or their behavior is not what it used to be. No, no. So there are many changes in their behavior. And then the feeling of worthless or feeling guilty, difficulty thinking, concentrating, or making decisions. And it can also be accompanied by thoughts of death or suicide. So again, symptoms must last at least 2 weeks and must represent a change in your previous level of functioning for a diagnosis of depression. Now, please note that this list that I showed you earlier, no, and what we're seeing on screen right now, this is not for you to self-diagnose, okay? So it's not also for you to diagnose other people. Only psychiatrists can diagnose, no? But this is to raise awareness in instances wherein a significant other, you might notice changes in their behavior of your loved ones, which would also prompt or call for help. So at least you have, let's say, siguro, something that you can look into, no, for them. But of course, it will help you to ask for help from a mental health professional. All right. Now, during the early part of the pandemic, I think last year, 2020, there was actually a study, no, during the early phase of the pandemic in the Philippines. And so far from the participants, one-fourth of the respondents reported moderate to severe anxiety, while one-sixth reported moderate to severe depression and psychological impact. Again, this is during the early phase of the pandemic in the Philippines. Now, we ask, how do I know if someone has a mental health problem, and how can we support them? No, so how can we support not only students but again significant others who might be having anxiety or depression, or who might be going through some mental health concerns. So sometimes it will seem obvious. No, it will seem obvious when someone is going through a hard time. No, the symptoms presented earlier might be evident, but there are also times wherein there's no simple way of knowing if they have a mental health problem. Sometimes, but the thing is, you do not need to know everything, which is why it's more important that we are able to respond sensitively and compassionately to someone who may seem troubled than to find out exactly, that they have a diagnosis. But again, a diagnosis is helpful to be able to for that for your significant other to receive the appropriate treatment or help. Now, although certain symptoms are common with specific mental health problems, no two people will behave exactly in the same way when they are when they don't feel so good. No, so if you know the person well, again, if it's a family member, a friend, a workmate, your student, then you may notice no the changes in their behavior or mood. So if you're worried about someone, it can be difficult to know what to do. However, when you're aware that there is an issue, it is important not to wait. Because waiting and hoping that they will come to you for help might lose valuable time in getting them support. So talking to someone is often the first step, so to take when they are going through a hard time. So that way you can find out what is troubling them and what you can do to help. Now, hearing about anxiety and depression, how would we be able to support our loved ones, and significant others? So the following tips that I will be presenting will be focusing on how we can be a more supportive, significant other or individual to someone who might be experiencing anxiety, depression, and other mental health concerns. So this framework this view or perspective will be more of or for the general public. Okay, so it's more aligned also to psychological first aid. Now, just some tips or disclaimer as I present this. The tips presented, it's not intended to substitute diagnosis, therapy, or treatment. So this is provided only to help people get started, no, in their search for relevant information and as a guide for improving mental health. So again, everyone's experiences are unique and complex, and the information and strategies may not work for your unique situation or for your significant other's unique situation. So again, it's very important that you always seek professional help when it is needed. Okay. So how do we support someone? How do we help someone who has mental health concerns? So I think the first step would always be to educate yourself. So right now, I'm thankful that a number of us are here this afternoon. I know it's a weekday, but you shared your time or you really invested your time to be able to know about how to assist students and significant others who are having mental health concerns. So by educating yourself, you are able to identify symptoms or things to look out for. So let's say you would know how to spot someone who might be having mental health concerns, and this could be changes in mood, or there's an unusual behavior presented by them. And by educating yourself as well, you also are allowing yourself to know what are the proper response options. So when someone is going through mental health concerns, you would know what to do, what not to do, what to say, what not to say. And at the same time, you will also be able to know what are also your limitations and boundaries in terms of the help that you can offer. And eventually, you also educate yourself on which organizations, which individuals can assist your significant other, in terms of getting the help that they might need. Okay. So once you've educated yourself and you try now to talk to the person or to the individual, second would be to set time aside with no distractions. So when you try to talk to someone or get to their concerns and ask them how they are, it is important that to provide an open and non-judgmental space with no distractions. So don't do it like, let's say, when you're very busy in the middle of the job and you're still catching up your deadlines, and that's the time that you will be asking, no, because it's very important that you give them your full attention. And at the same time, you also prepare yourself to be in the headspace to talk about their concerns. So it's not something na pwede rin, sorry, nagbisaya ako, no? So it's not something that you just insert in the midst of your busy day. It's something that you really give time, no, and you give your full attention. And again, it's very important that you are also in the right headspace to talk to them about their concerns, because it would really entail patience, no, to hear them out. So as counselors, we make sure that we really have a space for that. No, our counseling room is conducive for that, because sometimes these students or our clients, sometimes they do not get exactly straight to the point. No, so sometimes we really have to ask them more questions and really ask them how they're doing, what are the things, what are the changes in their life. So we'll really have to talk more or facilitate these questions. And it might be the same for you as well, no? It might sometimes there are people who just say, when you ask them how are they doing, they'll just say I'm okay, just to end the discussion, or for them, for you not to bother them anymore. But then if you are really sincere with getting to know their concerns, then give them the time, and give and also allow yourself to have that headspace to hear them out. Okay. So third is to let them share as much or as little as they want to. So again, similar to the psychological first aid, no, part of listening, we do not force them to talk. But at the same time, when they're talking, we also listen. We listen to them with our eyes, with our ears, and with our heart. So if able, and they are able to share more, let them lead the discussion at their own pace. So do not put pressure on them to talk. So which is why it's very important that when you try to talk to them, you have the time, you have the energy, you are in the right headspace to do it. No, so it really entails patience as well. So again, don't put pressure on them to tell you anything that they aren't ready to talk about. So talking can take a lot of trust and courage, and probably you might be the first person that they have been able to talk about it. So maybe where you are the first person to notice and really ask them how they are. So listen carefully to what they tell you. Um, Try to repeat what they have said back to them to ensure that you have understood it. So you can say, so you were saying earlier that you've been feeling down the past days. Is that correct? So maybe just ask them back, no, and just verify if it's what you've heard from them is or if what you've understood is correct as well. So you don't have the thing is you don't have to agree with what they are saying. They might have their own thoughts about it, they might have their own opinions about it, but by showing that you understand how they feel, you're letting them know that you respect their feelings, because sometimes they do not need advices. This is what I always say, no, sometimes you don't I had students before, clients na, Miss, when we were having our counseling session, we were talking about how he is, how are his classes, his experiences with the teachers. And I think one striking thing that he told me was that, Miss, this teacher came to me and he talked to me and asked me how I am. And at first I said, wow, that's good, no, that your teacher was checking up on you to really to know how you're feeling. yes, miss, but then eventually along the way, he just told me that I should do this, that I should be thankful, that I should be grateful, that I'm having this opportunity still to go to school. And he was telling me all these things that I should be, should not be, and all. And then after that, miss, I just kept quiet. I just let him go on. And then I just nodded. I did not share anymore. So, di ba, it's very counterproductive. You're asking the person, the student, how he is or how she is doing, but then eventually you're telling them what they should do, not to do it. And that itself limits no the interaction, the conversation, and it stops it. And hearing that being confirmed by a student was really striking. No? So after that, miss, I just nodded and I just kept quiet. So I think, yes, as educators, as friends, as colleagues, again, they don't need, I probably they already have those ideas in their head, no, about what they should be doing, but please allow them to share first. Listen to them first. Okay? So again, that's letting them share as much or as little as they want. And again, acknowledge their feelings. Okay. Fourth is don't try to diagnose or second guess their feelings. So you probably we're not all medical experts, no? And while we may be happy to talk and offer support, sometimes we aren't licensed counselors or psychologists or mental health professionals. So when they're trying to share and you're trying to see how they are doing, no, try not to make assumptions about what is wrong or jump in too quickly with your own diagnosis or solutions. Again, you are not there as their messiah, no, or someone who will save them. So for again, your role is more of facilitating, how they're doing, and to start a conversation, and it might open up possibilities, and it for them to seek further mental health advice or diagnosis or support. Okay, so again, don't try to diagnose or second guess their feelings. The fifth one is to keep questions open ended. So instead of stating observations, examples such as, I can see that you are feeling very low, try asking it in a question. So, how are you feeling today? Can you tell me how you're feeling today? So, again, try to keep your language neutral as well, and give the person the time to answer, and try not to grill them with too many questions, because sometimes the person might be asking, why is this person asking me too many questions? No, is this an interview? Is this so make sure that it's also paced well, no, pace your questions well, and make sure it's related to your previous question, so the not something that might jump from one topic to another. So make sure that it comes casually, it comes naturally as well, so don't force too much to it as well. So what questions can facilitate um, conversations, no? So again, I'm sure you're familiar with open-ended questions and closed-ended questions. So example, are you feeling okay? So usually the answer to that is yes or no, but we can frame it in a way that it can lead to more conversations. So again, how are you feeling today? And other questions to facilitate this are what and how questions. So, what are some of the changes that you have experienced lately? What are significant events in your life lately that you feel like there's an impact on you? So, use those questions, know what and how questions, because what facilitates information, how would more go more into the process, no, the process of things. So these are some of the questions. Now, as a counselor, we do not also encourage the use of um, the why questions, because it can lead to a person or to a client to become more of a defensive, because they say, why didn't you pass your work? No, so sometimes it can put the person at the defensive. No, so you can try may I ask what happened that, oh, diba? So it's more of the information instead of defending the self, no. So which is why we really stick to what and how questions, and we avoid, we do not use why so much, to avoid putting the person or the client at a defensive. So that's for number 5, keeping your questions open ended. Now, number 6 is to talk about well-being. So again, one of the tenets of the positive psychology is really to build on person's strengths. No, so what are their coping? How are they handling their concerns? So if they're if they've been feeling sad and down for the past weeks, or they're having physical manifestations of their anxiety, what are they doing so far when these situations come up? So how did they handle it? Um, so we build on that. No, we ask them how they are coping with it, and probably I'm sure some of them already tried doing something to be able to manage their feelings, to manage their situation. So build on this, build on the strengths, ask them on their coping strategies. Or if, let's say, if they're at a loss of what to do, ask them, what have you done before that has worked for you in the past? No, so what are these things that work for you in the past? Because sometimes it can also help them. No, we have different ways of coping. So you try asking about the ways that they distress. How do they practice self-care? And have they read something that they found helpful, no, in the internet? So if aside from these, no, aside from these ways in terms of their coping strategy, it's also important that they also check on their basic needs, and that's exercising, having a healthy diet, and getting a good night's sleep. So these basic, no, can help protect your mental health and sustain well-being. So there are different ways of self-care. So right now there are many exercises such as yoga, meditation, no, for mental strength and all that. um, yes, these exercises may help as well now, but of course we have to also use it with caution, especially when we're dealing with anxiety and depression. But if it's for mild cases, yes, these may help. So this one now, how do you prioritize your self-care? So there's actually a graph for it. So 50% of it should be on your basic needs. So no, these are things that you need to do to maintain or to sustain, so that you will be able to be um, you'll be able to cope with life's challenges. No? So it's again very important to get your enough sleep, hydration, food or your diet. Make sure you're getting or you're eating healthy food, no? So get enough greens, get enough your fruits, your proteins, no? So all of these. So, and of course your support and your safety. So these are your basic needs in terms of your self-care. Now 30% is for instant relief. So these are some of the things that you do that you feel to make you feel good immediately, no? So it could be a hot shower, it might be exercising or meditation or just taking a nap or getting a massage or to walk. So these are some of your instant relief. Some may go to food, you know, some would feel like they feel better after they eat a chocolate cake. But try to also, again, you go back to your basic, no? So make sure you also have your healthy diet, because it's very important as well to sustain you all throughout. And then another is for future relief. No, so what can you do as well? No, self care for future relief. Probably journaling can help, or therapy can help. Talking to someone, no, talking to a mental health professional, working on your goals, no, your motivations. What are the steps that you can do? So these are some of the areas that you can look into in terms of self care or your well being. So it's also one actually of the things that I remind my clients or students to really go back now, especially the basic needs. So if you're having trouble coping with the latest changes in your life, try to um, uh, try to look into your basic self care. Have you been sleeping well? Usually, it's not. Usually, it's really the sleep that's been compromised. No? Sometimes they sleep too late, or sometimes they skip on their meals, no, or sometimes their physical movement, no, they don't move that much. Of course, there are many these things. No, if you're consistent on this, there are many studies that support that it can actually make you feel good, and it's also one of the important things for self care and well being. Okay, so again, sleep, nutrition, exercise. Okay, and I think we're down to our seventh or second to the last step now when we're talking about caring for students with anxiety and depression. So offer them help, especially in seeking professional support, and provide information and ways to do this. So again, it's related to educating, no? So um, inform them, or let's say offer them your time, your resource. It could also be your resources, no? Your time is a resource, no? And your reassurance. And also, you might want to offer to go to a mental health professional with them. So, or you might help them talk to a friend or a family member. So maybe you can offer them, with what you're experiencing right now, do you want to talk to a mental health professional? I can help you out with that. So I can also go with you if you're more comfortable. No, so but with all those, no, try not to take control. So and let them allow them to make the decisions for themselves. Okay, unless of course there's of course a disclaimer as well. Unless of course there are already instances of harm. No, so again, if there's harm to others, harm to self, or um, someone is harming them. So these are some of the things to consider as well. Okay, so offer them help. You can give them information, no? So make sure it's also legit information, not something that we just see, and make sure that it's also with a proper reference, no, or resource. So make sure you offer them correct information. Again, this is still similar to psychological first aid. And then you can offer to go with them to see a mental health professional so that they can be properly diagnosed if in case there's a need for diagnosis, or they can, or probably in case of severe cases, would they need medication for it. So these are some of the areas that or these are some of the ways that you can also offer them help. Okay, and then lastly is to know your limits. So again, um, all although there are only a few mental health professionals in the country, there are again ways that you can assist someone. No, again, that's through psychological first aid. And again, just remember that there are also limitations to that. No, so if you feel like what they are sharing to you, or what they are already exhibiting is already beyond you, then again, refer to the proper mental health professional, whether a counselor, a psychologist, or a psychiatrist. So know your limits because, again, first and foremost, we aim to do no harm. And by knowing this, we know that we should give them the appropriate support or treatment for that. So that's one, no? So ask for help if you feel like you can't assist them already. If it's already serious, then ask for help. If you believe that they are in immediate danger or they have injuries that need medical attention, then you need to take action, no, and take care of that first and make sure that they are safe. So second is, aside from that, no, aside from knowing your limits in your training, second is also be able to communicate your boundaries. So sometimes you might be the only person that they might ask help from, but again, you also have your life, no? You won't be there for them probably 24/7. So be able to communicate your boundaries. Um, you can tell them, no, as a friend, you can tell them, friend, I am only available on weekends. Can we talk more on it on weekends? And maybe we can meet or video call to talk more about your concerns. No, so be able, make sure to be able to communicate that. No, that you're not also available all the time. For teachers, for educators, I think what works really is that, especially right now that we will be starting a new school year, is that as early as the start at the start of your, let's say, on your first meeting, be able to communicate what are your expectations from them. So right now it's important that we also have some accommodations for certain cases, but first and foremost, be able to um, give them, set your expectations. What do you expect from them? What they can expect from you as well. So let's say, what do you expect from them? Do you expect them to give quality work? Do you expect them that if they don't submit within a few days, that they communicate with you on the reason? No? So set all those expectations, and what can they expect from you as well? So from my end, once you submit a paper, give me 3 days to check, and I will give you feedback on that. Okay. So these are some of the areas that you can look into, no? And of course, I'm sure that there will be special cases. So maybe you can communicate it clearly with the student. Ask them how they're doing. Let's say they might be late already for so long. So ask them how they're doing, what's making them submit their work so late. And probably you can ask them, will you still be able to submit it? Because I can give you this period to submit. But if not, this will be your grade. So again, be transparent, be clear to them, communicate it to them. Okay, so set your expectations for them and what they can also expect from you. So let's say if they want to consult with you for consultation hours, or let's say to ask you about certain questions about your subject matter, especially this is in the case for the teachers, then know that this is my schedule, no? So make it clear to them. I think that's the most important one. Set expectations, be clear, be transparent. Expectations from the students and what they can expect from you also. All right. So I guess that's the last one, no? So from knowing your limits. So if you want to read more, these are some of my references for this afternoon's talk. So maybe you can read more about it in terms of anxiety and depression. So I hope that the tips presented can be helpful as you try to support someone with mental health concerns. So with that, thank you so much, and we can entertain maybe a few questions from the audience.
Good afternoon, Miss. Thank you so much for that. Pahuway sa tagamay. Let's relax a little bit. There are already a couple of questions that our participants gave through the chat box. I think it's better that we start with the first one. One of the participants asked if you can give example or situation that would illustrate age inappropriate anxiety disorder. So I think
So,
this is just a clarification.
Usually, no, so example, there are instances wherein, let's say, it's the first time of a child to go to school, and sometimes, no, there is that anxiety for children, no, not to be away from their parents, no. So I've been a grade school counselor for how many years as well, and I really experienced this, especially at the start of classes, that there are really students or children who will not let go of their parents, of their mama, no? So, or their yayas, no? They'll be holding on to their pants or to the skirts of their yayas or to their parents. No, they will be crying really, no? And sometimes it's really a challenge. And I think we see that at this, previously I see on the news, no, na there are especially for mga kindergarten or for nursery, it's your first time to go to school, so there's really an anxiety for that, no, it's your first time. So I don't think that it would also be applicable now when you go, no, when you've already had experience with school for so long, when you're in high school or in college. So I don't think that you'd be college students would be crying their eyes out, no, from to their mamas and to their yayas at that age. So usually these are some of the examples, no, of age inappropriate anxiety disorders, or not really anxiety disorders, but really anxiety. So I hope that answers your concern.
Thank you for that, Miss. And then our next question is, is it possible to be prescribed with medication such as SSRIs or antidepressants by a psychiatrist without naming a diagnosis? It's a confusing experience to take meds without a name to call my experiences. So I think this is coming from a participant whom was given medication, but she was not given a clear definition of her diagnosis or
Mm,
a clear diagnosis.
okay. Hello, Eliza. I think I'm sorry if I'm naming names now, but um, I hope that your psychiatrist will be able to talk with you about it, or you can also ask. No, so um, I I do not know as to the extent I cannot answer for your psychiatrist who diagnosed it, but hopefully, if there's one way, maybe you can clarify what is your possible, or let's say be clear of what is this for. So the opportunity to be able to consult with a psychiatrist, so it's actually pricey. Not everyone gets the privilege to do that, but please do maximize that interaction, no? So you're letting me take this, what is this for, what are possible side effects, what can this help with, no? So these are some of the questions, or that can help you facilitate or give you an idea of what possible diagnosis that you might have. But hopefully, usually, from my experience, no, I have my father is actually clinically depressed as well. So what really helped was that there was a diagnosis first, and then we went into medication because it's also a severe case. And actually, it helped us that we really have to ask, no, really ask the psychiatrist about what this might do, what are some of the side effects that we may see upon taking these medications. So I guess it would be really important to clarify with your psychiatrist about it. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for that, Miss. Um, there's another question. Um, how do you allot percentages on prioritizing self-care? Somebody I think wants to clarify on this. What does 50% mean?
Yeah. So I guess when we talk about prioritizing self care, no, so I think it's actually a graph which was also suggested by a friend who's also a psychologist, no, and that when we talk about self-care, it's really more of really what are the things that you consistently do on a day-to-day basis that can help you out with it, no? So sometimes we do things when we become so tired, I need a vacation, but sometimes that's only for immediate relief. Now how about on the other days that how about on the other days um, that you do not have a vacation? What are the things that you can do for self-care? So usually it should be something that you can do consistently and that it's sustainable. So I guess that's really for self-care. The sleep, no, how are you sleeping every day? Are you having enough hours? Is it a good quality sleep? The nutrition that you're taking, is it also, are you taking in good food as well? And are you exercising? So as I say, exercise is different from physical movement, no, na from the chores that you do. So exercising really is a conscious effort for you to move, to be able to become more active, and that it would help you also in your self-care. So I think more of not really more of we don't really look into much about the allocation, but really we have to in terms of in terms of what you should focus more on. And that's the sustainability and what you can do every day to help with your self care. So I hope that's clear somehow.
Yes. I do know of one self-care that I do every day, and that is to take a bath longer at night, doing like long baths in the morning, because at night you are like trying to clean out and also trying to relax while taking a bath. So
Yes,
that's
that is true.
one self-care that I think that we do a lot also. It's sustainable because you only have to,
Yes,
take a bath.
yes,
Pero dapat di na siya tangtangon gikan sa imo ang buhaton nila.
Yeah,
If
that's
that
true.
helps.
Because right now, usually, with the start of the pandemic, everyone is just at home, and sometimes they just feel like, okay, I can just go on for days without taking a bath. But it's still very helpful, no? So these are things that you can do every day to be able to take care of yourself. Thank you, Miss Jara.
Thank you, po, Miss. Okay, let's go to the next one. How can we help someone who is suffering from serious mental health condition but is not willing to seek professional help? So I think somebody had an experience of having a friend, siguro, that has been showing mental health, bad mental health condition, but is unwilling to look for help. So how
Okay.
do
Yeah, I think it's really also one of the struggles, no? Because I've read a study that Filipinos are one of the nationalities who's really low on um, help-seeking behaviors in terms of mental health. No, so they don't really go and ask mental health or really seek professional help in terms of mental health. No, and it's really sad to hear to read about that. No, I read it on a research na that we're really low in terms of help-seeking behavior, and I think one of the factors that would affect this is of course the stigma. No, there's still the stigma that when you ask for help from a mental health professional, sometimes immediately baliw or that there's something wrong. So I guess we have to focus more of, because I think for the past years also there's a focus of mental illness instead of mental wellness. You know how you can be to become a more productive person. So I think one of the factors that affects that is of course the stigma. Second is the culture. So in the Asian culture, we usually solve problems within the family. So sometimes it's not common to have someone outside to help us, no, because we try to solve it within the family. So I think first and foremost is I think part of that is really awareness or educating them as well, no, na, um, about what what kind of mental health help or support there is, and that they won't be judging. But I think second is also asking them what's making them hesitate, what's stopping them, because from there we might also know what are their apprehensions from asking help. So probably a factor could be financial. Second, might be also be the stigma, or maybe they just don't, or are they still afraid of getting to know about themselves more. So let's examine first what are the factors that's affecting them not to seek mental health support. So this is one area that we can look into first. And then from there, we can address, no, or maybe address their concerns and on their hesitations. But ultimately, let's say if you already addressed um, all their hesitations, but in the end they still do not want to do it, then it would be very difficult to force them as well, especially if adult na. But again, assure them that you are still there. You will be able to assist them, um, and that if they need help, that you will be there. Communicate it lang to them. However, for instances of danger to self, no, I think as significant others, pwede naman mo step in, no, for that, especially if danger na to self, to others, or someone is harming them. So I guess that's
okay. Sorry, Kyle, Miss Jazz. I'm very sorry about the noises kanina while I was talking. Actually, I am moving houses today.
it's
So
okay, Miss Jara, no worries.
everyone is actually very busy sa akong likod karon at my back. However, let's look into other questions. So kanina, Miss Jazz, it talks about people who really needs help but doesn't want to ask for help. How about those who wanted to ask for help, but we as the one that they are talking to, how do we avoid giving unsolicited advices? Because sometimes we had that kind of reaction when somebody wants help from us.
Okay. So the question was to how to avoid giving unsolicited advice. Is that correct?
Or advices that we shouldn't have said because we aren't professionals.
Okay. So usually when we talk to students, to clients, no, it's really more of um facilitating. So how are you doing and all that. So usually we ask them these questions, and so far um I once they share about their concerns, the question that I really ask them so far, what have you done to help you with your concern? Is there something that you have done? So instead of giving my suggestion, giving my suggestion on what they should do, I ask them first, what have you done so far to help you with your concern? And then from there, we can build on it. No, so let's say, is it helping you out, or um, is there any help that you might still need? And then from there I can give my suggestion. So um, do you want to try doing this? Maybe it can help you. So it's more of framing it away na it's a question, no, but still giving them the decision to do it or not, instead of, okay, you should do this, you should do that, you should do this, and you should do that. So instead of telling them what to do, give them the option to accept it or to reject it. So frame it in a way that, do you want to, have you tried doing this to be able to, example, for let's say, usually my clients really have problems sleeping, or there are really instances. So what have they done so far in terms of sleeping? Miss, I did this. Do you want to try improving more on your sleep hygiene? So these are some of the tips and suggestions that I can give you now. But of course, it's still up to you if you're going to do it. And but it's, if it could be worth a try, then let me know how you did it. So usually, so I give them these tips. So again, allow them to accept it or to reject it. So again, because ultimately it's still their choice. Instead of, oh, you should do this, you should take a bath, you should do this, and before sleeping, you should not do not play your games and all those. So give them the opportunity for deciding. So I guess that's to avoid unsolicited advices. I hope that's clear.
Okay, thank you for that, Miss Jazz. Let's move up. How many questions do you think you can still handle, Miss Jazz? There's kind of a lot of questions,
Yeah,
but
mm-mm.
based on our time, baka hindi po natin ma-accommodate lahat. So, um, are they open to like message you if they have a question later on?
Yeah, sure. I have my email. I usually respond more on my email. I have a separate. I have a work Facebook account, but usually it's for students. So it might get flooded, no, with messages from students, and I might not see your message because it might go to the message request. So you can always email me. Um, I will type my email here.
Okay.
Okay.
So, two questions. Is that good, Ms. Jazz? We'll be accommodating two more questions. Good, Raba?
Yeah, 2 to 3 will be okay, Miss Jara.
Okay. Thank you so much. So, let's move to the next question. So, our next question is, I think this is more of a situation. So,
Mm.
how can I tell if a high school student is really depressed or if he or she is just using this as an excuse to not do the requirements or to submit way beyond the deadline? Student is seems to be unmotivated, uninterested in virtual classes, but seems to be okay in social media. Or maybe he or she must be putting different faiths as a defense mechanism. It is hard for
Okay.
teachers to determine this in distance learning setup. Any tips you can give for us? Technically, problem ko rin to, Miss Jess. So, medyo.
Yeah, I think it's really It's really a problem for most, no. So sometimes even as counselors, maybe they just use us even, no, to maybe have a certification from us. But again, I I put it in a framework wherein um, all of the concerns that I receive are serious and true. No, rather than seeing it as a way na are they are they even sincere or not, and then it's actually sincere. No, and it's actually true. So I better help them and take it as it is, rather than if it is true and then I push them away or I turn them away. So again, there are instances that we cannot really tell exactly, no, unless of course we have a really proof of diagnosis from a psychiatrist that they're really diagnosed or they're seeing a mental health professional. But again, we see it in that framework, no, na we better help them as it is rather than it is already there that they already have a concern but we turn away because we are doubting, diba? Then we are doubting them about their sincerity. So again, we try to talk to them. We ask them consistently, we refer them to mental health professionals. But again, I think where it comes into play, no, especially in terms of the submissions, again, as teachers, it's really to communicate your expectations from the start. No, it's really communicating your expectations from the start. So at the beginning of the class, it really would set everything. No? So from the start, this is what I want. This is I will be giving you a leeway for this. If beyond this, I would need an explanation, no, or from your end. So, and I will be contacting you, or I'll be referring you to a guidance counselor to reach out to you. So again, I think it's very important that you set the expectations from the start. So again, with mental health, we cannot see it again. We cannot see it all the time. Again, but again, we help as it is, rather than turning away our students. So I guess that's that. Thank you so
So
much.
the rule of thumb is to help rather than turn away. So
Yes.
I think that's actually true. And as teachers, also we try to exhaust all of the possible help and as well as all of the possible solutions that we can give to our students based on their situations.
Yeah.
Exhaust, exhaust, exhaust everything
But
that can be exhausted.
yeah, but of course, as teachers, you are not in this alone. Okay, this is what I always say: make good use of your
Yes.
counselors. Your counselors are there. They will so that you'll be able to focus on your classes, the giving of instruction. Refer them to your counselors. Ask your counselor, can you talk to this student for me, please? So refer them to your counselors. Let them do it, no? Because I'm sure they have for you to at least one load off from you. I know you have to prepare your lesson plans, get in touch with students, check assignments. So but again, you don't have to do everything. If you feel like it's too much on your plate, refer to your counselors. Ask help from your school counselors, mental health professionals to do it for you. Okay, because you're not alone in this.
Thank you, Miss Jazz. That is very reassuring on the case of us teachers. Okay, so let's go to the next questions. A question. Some students share about fear or stress caused by their volatile domestic situation because there are really some students na inaani. Aside from assuring a listening ear and that the stories will be held in confidence, I don't think I can do much else. Am I doing enough by being a listening ear? I think that's what he's meaning here. So
As a listening ear, yes, you're doing so much already. So even as counselors, usually what the students, clients want is to be heard. And the act that you are listening, that you're paying attention, your full attention to them, it's already give it's already a very big part, no. And I think you yourselves know, in if you have concerns sometimes when you rant even to your friends or to your workmates about work probably, or about mga concerns niyo about the family, sometimes it's relieving as well, being able to talk it out to someone. And the fact that you are listening to a student, that's a very big act itself already. and that can help, no? But of course, if you want to take it a step further and you feel like this person really needs professional mental health, then you can probably suggest for them to seek mental health or professional mental health if they are willing as well. But if not, you can give them resources probably, or to whom you can refer. If you're in an if you're in the education sector, I'm sure you have your counselors with you, so you can encourage them to see their counselors as well. So yes, listening really helps.
Okay, so thank you for that, Miss Jess. So having a listening ear is already good enough. I still remember the lesson that we had with Sir Sip when it comes to empathetic listening. So being able to listen, being able to summarize, as well as being able to reassure that you are listening to the student is already a very big help.
But I also
So
just want to add Miss Jara, no, because I guess I probably missed out the point where she mentioned about domestic abuse or volatile family situation, no? So if
yes, miss.
um, it's very important that we also know, we ask the student what does he or she want to do with it, no? Do you want to, let's say, I know this is more complicated na siguro, especially if there is violence in the family, there's your VAUC, your violence against women and children. So um let them know lang, ask them. Usually it's really more of asking them, how do you want to proceed with this? Do you just want to talk? Do you want to just share, or do you want to take legal action on it? So offer them also those choices, so that you would also know, you also manage, know from your end what can you do also for your end. So I think that's it. So ask them lang if they want to talk, they want to share, or do you want to take legal action if in cases there's violence, domestic abuse, and all those things.
So, dili lang makalimtan, will not forget about those choices, especially in those complicated situations.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think we're down to our last question. Okay lang ba, Miss Jazz?
Yes, yes, me.
I know we're running more than the time intended, but I think we can have a last question. Last one. Okay. So this would be the last. Um, Good afternoon, everyone. Can I ask for activities or recreations that would help subside our students' anxiety in class, especially in our setup now that is online? So, is there any, can you, I think, is there any tips on how to create activities or recreations that would subside anxiety in class?
Okay. So I think first and foremost, well, I think in terms of anxiety, so sometimes anxiety is somehow when you do not know what to expect, or let's say because you don't know what will happen, it makes you feel anxious, diba? So let's say you might let's say you might be giving a talk, so you do not know how you will be received, no, and but again, so with students, again, it's still important that first you communicate your expectations. That's one way, no, how to relieve them of anxiety. They might be anxious how they will be graded. They might be anxious of what will happen to me if, let's say, I have internet connections and internet connectivity problems, and I am not able to submit on time. So these are different anxieties, no, or of your students. So again, make sure to address them on your first meeting, and continuously communicate it with them throughout the school year. So I think that's very important. The expectations, what can they do? So because they have very many anxieties. So how will I be graded with this? And how can I get in touch if I have a concern? So make sure that you have laid out all of these and this at the start, So if you're focusing more of activities that you can do as a class, there are actually many resources on the internet. No, but this has proved difficult actually to translate it online because not everyone will have very stable internet connection. Not everyone will have access to Zoom or Google Meet. So um, maybe icebreakers can help, no, mga activities. So what I usually do, especially at the start when I meet someone, because I also have group guidance online, no, at the start. So because especially for the freshies, I it's my first time to meet them. So aside from just an icebreaker, I ask, this is a simple activity with which I did know. It's entitled "Who Do You Think?" So I ask them to turn on their cams if they're able, and then I just give out certain characters. Who do you think lives farthest from UP Cebu? So it's like a getting to know you activity as well. So they know also who are the people around them. So who do you think is the youngest in this Zoom meeting? So they just take a guess about their name, and it actually opens up for conversation, allows them to get to know more about their classmates, especially if it's their first time, no, especially if they're freshies. So these are some of the activities, no. I give icebreakers, but again, also give out the expectations to them. And then from some of the teachers that I talked to before they start their online classes or while waiting to start their online class, they actually play an instrumental music or a calming music, so it actually come somehow I've heard feedback from students that, Miss, I appreciate that this teacher plays music, calming music before we start our class because it also calms me down. So yeah, it might be very superficial, but it actually also helps students, no, where there's an extra or there's an added flavor to that, no, that's one while waiting, they play a calming music, or they have icebreakers or games because sometimes we might be too serious also in our activities. So it helps that they have breaks or in between as well. But again, first and foremost, the expectations and how you can handle all these different anxieties that they might have. I hope I answered that.
Thank you so much, Mrs. That's very clear, actually. So, as teachers, one of the best way we can help our students to also know what they are expected to is to be clear on the expectations that we have from them, and also be clear on how they will be graded, and in specific situations, how they can actually um, say, for example, be able to catch up or be able to contact the teacher. So
Yes.
that's very important for the students. And it also lessens their anxiety, their fear of not being able to see what will happen next in the future.
Yeah.
Okay, so yes. And that will be the end of our questions, Miss Jazz. I know that we are running out of time. Thank you so much, Miss Jazz, for giving us the talk today. Thank you also for our participants. Actually, Miss Jazz, bibigyan kita ng hint. Si Mr. Richie nandito.
Oh, miss.
Yes, Miss Richie Lita Galapata is
Ah,
here.
Miss Rich.
So she is actually listening to all of your even the past webinars that you have. So Miss
Wow.
Richie.
Thank you,
Okay,
Miss Rich.
so guys, everyone, fellow teachers, students, and those who are just willing to learn now. So I do know that a lot of people here now are came because they are willing to learn. Thank you so much for being interested and attending your full attention, no? Full attention, good guys, today in our webinar. Thank you so much. And to you also, Miss Jazz, being our speaker and always saying yes, even for the reruns. Okay, so thank you so much for that as well. Miss Jazz, any last words to our participants before we end our webinar today?
Well, once again, I would like to thank everyone, and I think the reason that you're here is because you care, and I think that's one of the very important things that we have to remind ourselves. No, and in a world that's full of doubt, no, of let's say looking out behind our backs, no, how are we good? I think for now it's really more of about care and compassion, and how we can extend that to others, but again, most importantly, to ourselves. So with that, thank you so much, and I hope that you have a restful weekend and a great week ahead. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Miss Jazz. Before anything else, we would like to, before we say goodbye, I would like to invite participants today. So if you can open your camera for a short pictorial. Okay. So um, I will be taking a picture. We have a couple of slides. So I don't know what slide you will be in. So maybe you will just smile for a few seconds. Okay. I will start with the first slide. Okay, thank you so much. Next slide. Okay, thank you so much. Next slide. Okay, next slide. Okay, and our last one. Okay, thank you so much for being here. We'll start opening their slides. So nice to see you all. I am Jera Palang, Miss Jazz, coming from UP Cebu. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank